since this part isn't really going to be that eventful combat-wise, I thought I might take some time to talk about the actual chapter itself, which has a very different style to anything in the previous chapters, and probably in the whole series, actually. It takes quite a bit of getting used to, but it's not that bad once you do. But I will say that if you rush into the beginning of this chapter, you're very likely to lose a few characters. Essentially, the majority of the enemies you'll be fighting here are either Pegasus Knights or mages. The mages are a serious problem because there really hasn't been, in this game so far, instances of a huge group of mages attacking you all at once. That's really bad for any physical user. Most physical users will die to about 3 mages. That includes people like Sigurd. And right from the beginning of this chapter, Tailtiu can have a conversation with Azel, which is a pretty good thing to do if you're planning on pairing them. It gives 100 love points and a slight HP boost to her. It also expands on her backstory a little bit. Basically, she, Azel, and Lex all knew each other when they were kids, most likely because they were all related to some of the high-up rulers of Granville. Yeah, in case it wasn't apparent before, her dad is Reptor, the one behind the whole kill the prince and accuse Sigurd plot. So it's kind of obvious why people in your army act weird around her. Yeah, because of all the Pegasus Knights in this chapter, archers are invaluable. You'll definitely want Midale and Jamuka to get a lot of action here. And of course Bridget as well, but she can really handle most things on her own. It is really helpful having an extra couple of archers though. Now, I'm going to mention this now to anyone who is playing this game and is up to this chapter. Send Dew out, even if you're not training him, and just have him go with your main army. If you don't do this, it'll cause a lot, and I mean a lot, of frustration later on. Basically, if you don't have him with you, you'll be forced to take the long way to this castle coming up. And I mean the really long way. Another event, but this is a very significant one. Hopefully, Edain is paired by now. If she's paired with Midale or Jamuka, she'll give them the hero bow. If she's paired with Azel, he'll give her the rescue staff. Now, 90% of the time she'll be paired with one of these 3, unless you're experimenting with obscure pairings or something. It certainly helps Midale, and it's a good time to have a good bow, because, as I said, there are a lot of Pegasus Knights in this chapter. Oh, I pressed the wrong button there. Yeah, the promote and guard castle buttons look really similar, so I get them confused sometimes. Unfortunately, you're not going to be seeing Noish promote in this playthrough. He's not all that bad. Why are they all moving so slowly? Surely the woods aren't slowing them down that much. Yeah, of course, this chapter has its fair share of villagers and pirates destroying them. It's generally a good idea to send Fury out to attack some of the more distant pirates. And here are the Pegasus Knights, which you won't have to worry about for a little while. Just concentrate on the mages for the moment. And Pamela, like Dietvar before, is one of the highest ranking Pegasus Knights in Silesia. Okay, there's a problem with him becoming Silesia's next king. The one who's currently in line for that position is too awesome for words. Unfortunately, this boss over here does have a sleep staff. Now, there's several ways to deal with this. You can silence him if you sold Deirdre's silent staff to someone else, preferably Edain. But thankfully, by this point, you have access to the Restore Staff, which makes taking on Sleep Staff users a lot easier. I mean, before, if a character got hit by a Sleep Staff, they'd be out of action for 5 turns, but now you can just restore them with this Restore Staff. Just checking to see if she's paired with Levin yet. Now, here's the thing. I was trying to keep them away from each other, just so I could eventually see that conversation that basically makes them instantly fall in love, regardless of how many love points they had before. Turns out that they actually fell in love before that, which means you won't be seeing that conversation in this playthrough. It's a shame, because that conversation is, I would say, pretty much canon. So I did want to show it. You can easily find it on a website that has the scripts to the game. Of course, Sylvia is still as useful as she always is, but the problem here with this chapter is, yeah, I've got to keep her pretty close to Claude, because I need to pair them. Just to make sure that he gets ahead of Levin. She starts with 190 love points with Claude, but after you capture the first castle in this chapter, there's a conversation that gives them another 100. It's not that hard to pair them in this chapter. Bridget, on the other hand, her pairings are a bit harder. She doesn't have any really easy pairings, as I've probably said before. So generally, for me, I'm trying to pair her with Dew. What I have to do is, I have to keep them next to each other for pretty much all of this chapter and most of the next. Since you have 50 turns in one chapter before love growth stop, that means there's a potential 200 love points to be obtained just by... No, 250, just by having them stand next to each other. And that's not counting the bonus they get just normally every turn. Since they start with 50, that means that there is enough time for, well, anyone to get paired in 2 chapters. Sorry there wasn't really much combat in this part, but hopefully I explained a bit about this chapter.